In this episode, we use The Matrix, Evangelion, and mixed martial arts to discuss the importance of faith when actualizing your optimal self. Welcome to the Bottom Turtle Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Bottom Turtle Podcast. I'm Dr. Shannon Ray, and we're joined by our co-host, visual designer Oyani Onamiya. How you doing, Oyani?
Man, I'm doing good, Shannon. What's up, man? How's the preparation for Christmas, man? Getting ready?
It's chaos.
We're recording this on the 23rd, so I guess 2 days.
2 days before Christmas. Yep.
Yeah.
It's pure chaos. Eunice and I actually opened gifts this morning because we're traveling to visit family for Christmas. So we'll be traveling on Christmas Eve and then spend Christmas with the family. And so it's been pretty chaotic over here.
I'll probably be home. I'm gonna make some dinner. Maybe I'm trying to set up my computer here, but it's acting up. But I'll probably watch a new Matrix movie that's coming out.
Oh yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, it's a Christmas movie. I don't care what anyone says. So
yeah, when you said that, I thought that maybe it was set during Christmas, but
it is my Christmas movie.
Keanu.
But yeah, we're supposed to be talking about The Matrix. That's the first one,
the original one,
out in 1999.
1999.
That's about 23 years ago.
Man, to me, The Matrix is the 90s. Just being like, all right, we're going out with a bang. We're going to take all of our 90s goodness and we're going to distill that down to the most potent essence of 90s movies goodness. And we're just going to end with the greatest 90s movie ever made.
And I think that one of the things that I will always give The Matrix credit for is how well they were able to combine so much of the best technology as it was at that time.
Yes.
And put it out there. And it still shapes how a lot of, sci-fi type movies are created now. Like the visual effect things they did then still, you could still see the influences in so many movies that they do today. Like the multiple camera thing, the slowing down of time, all of that stuff, bullet time, all that things. I remember watching this movie with my brother, and I probably didn't watch it in 99. I feel like I probably saw The Matrix for the first time, maybe sometime closer to 2001. Okay. Or like close to the end of 2000. And I was in Africa, so.
That's when Lord of the Rings had taken over at that point. 2001 was the age of orcs.
I didn't get into Lord of the Rings till much later, but.
Lord of the Rings changed my life. Lord of the Rings is my Matrix. I like the Matrix, but Lord of the Rings completely changed my trajectory on life, man.
Okay, we got to do an episode on that now. Because I know the Lord of the Rings was pretty good. Because I remember I watched the entire thing. I think they made 3 of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I watched all 3 of them back to back.
Okay.
So it really gave me like a fuller understanding of the lore and everything, because I didn't watch one, because I watched everything in one sitting, just back to back. It was a long day, but I watched all of it.
It's funny, the way I became familiar with Lord of the Rings is my friend Andrew and I went with my sister and her boyfriend to go watch How High, Red Man and Method Man, and at the time we weren't old enough to get in. And so when we got there, we thought we're just gonna we'll buy our tickets, see if they let us into the movie. They're like, yeah, you're not old enough. And so it just so happened that at the same time, this Fellowship of the Rings was playing. We're like, what is this? I guess we have nothing else to do.
For real?
Yeah, literally, we had no idea what the hell we were getting into. We just thought, oh, well, we need to watch something. And my sister is going to go watch How High. So we were disappointed to go watch this Lord of the Rings movie. We sat down having no idea what the fuck we were about to watch.
Blown away.
And at the end of it, I was so moved and excited by that movie that I was like, I can't wait till the next movie to come out. And I went and got the Two Towers book. I rode my bike to the library and got that book and read it. And that was one of the first books that I read for recreation. And I know people are like, oh, wow, you're like 15. It's your first time reading a book for recreation. It's like, well, before I would always read books because they were assigned to me at school. They weren't really something I did for fun. I was a video games person. I played video games for recreation. And so that book was the book that opened me up to reading for fun. It opened me up into fantasy. So I just started reading fantasy books like a fiend. I started playing Magic the Gathering, started getting to Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay,
that whole thing just started at that point.
Look, all the Matrix got me into was Keanu Reeves. Okay, that's it. Okay.
He's like, that's my dude now.
Yeah, I remember watching the Matrix for the first time with my brother, and at the time, some of the deeper concepts in the movie was probably lost. On me,
for sure,
because it was all about the shooting and the bullet time, and all of that.
The weird things like that, like you're seeing trailers for this movie and you see Trinity running up the wall, the first scene, what is going on in this world? Like that just immediately wants you to figure out why can she do that? Why does it look so cool? What the hell is going on? And you're just enamored by that.
It was so much about that movie that was done with a lot of intent. And one of the things that still, it makes The Matrix different is it's one of those unique pieces of art that somehow becomes a medium for both spiritual and philosophical, inquiry into our lives in general. Not to say that The Matrix is the only movie that has done this, but it is one of those movies that's out there that, really takes a deep dive into some of these spiritual and philosophical concepts. Some of these that have probably existed since forever.
Yes. What is reality, essentially?
Yeah, all that stuff. And I think that's what makes it special.
Well, it's funny you say that. So you say that when you first watched it, a lot of these the depth of the philosophical questions were lost on you and kind of, the metaphorical space they were constructing. And you kind of absorb it more emotionally. You're more fascinated by the world they've created and the characters and kind of these ideas that seem vague. It's almost like the way it's constructed is you can tell that it's something that is attached to a larger world.
Yeah.
And you don't quite understand the attachment, but that there's something
but
big
it resonates.
And deep going on here. It resonates,
yes.
And
it resonates somehow.
And that was actually something that I was talking to Eunice about, Evangelion and The Matrix, and which one's superior, which questions are asked that are deeper. What is it about these things that resonate so strongly? And Evangelion is another show I watched when I was a teenager that I definitely, a lot of the depth was completely lost on me, and I was just resonating with it on an emotional level as opposed to an intellectual one. And to me, Evangelion is one of the greatest pieces of art ever created by humanity. And I know that sounds I have really, not seen that. Yeah, I know that sounds like a huge statement, but like The Matrix, it is a show that asks deep questions, but actually has something of substance to say about the questions they ask. And I think that's important. You can bring up deep themes and topics, but if you really don't have anything interesting to say on them, it's not going to hit. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think The Matrix is one of those type of IPs that definitely does that. And, some of the concepts that were explored in the movie have existed for years. People have been asking these questions. I actually remember now one of the first. So, and the thing about The Matrix was after the first time I watched it, became one of those movies that was almost like a comfort thing. To where, I don't have anything to watch. We had these things called VCDs. To me, I feel like that wasn't big in the US for some reason.
Absolutely not.
But
I don't even know what that is.
VCDs were in between those read-write CDs we burned mixtapes on.
Yeah.
And DVDs.
Okay.
So it was like a CD that plays music, but it takes video and it could only take so much. So it would usually come in a 2-pack.
Okay.
And it was called a video CD. And this was what we had before we had DVDs.
Okay.
And so I played that thing out all the time. And over time, after every subsequent rewatch, I start to understand things better.
Yeah.
Start to see things that weren't there. And I probably saw The Matrix at least once a year.
Okay.
For years. And I remember I was reading about some Hindu philosophy. I feel like it's called something Vendetta, Advyata Vendetta, something like that.
I don't know. I never heard of it.
Yeah. And so basically, a lot of the ideas, like I said, that were in The Matrix have existed in Hindu philosophies and Buddhism and all this
Not
stuff
to
for
mention
years.
all of the Christian iconography
Yes.
and references
And
that are
all
in that
that. Oh
movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
I actually, there were actually churches who actually played that movie and used it as an allegory to kind of explain Christianity, and
Oh, okay.
there's so much that could be drawn out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
But the entire concept, of the Matrix is basically just telling us. I feel like on a deeper level, it's asking the question, what is reality?
I think there's actually at the core of a lot of it is conscious awareness and one's ability to manipulate their surroundings. And so you're saying like, what is reality? But
Yeah,
that comes down to the thing we were saying in the last episode about people are like, oh, it's all a construct. And I think to sort through what is reality, I think our structure that we've already been using in that you have hard reality and soft reality. And when you're talking about the construct, that is the soft reality, the shared reality that all humanity has, that we all share together. But within a society, you have the soft reality that is the laws of the society, the social norms of that society, and all of that structure creates a reality. And you have to navigate that reality. Like, you can't just go to someone's house and break down their door and steal their TV, because in our reality, we have laws against that. And so if you do that, then the consequence is you'll be arrested and then you'll go to jail. And so, like, what we view as real creates reality. Basically, we are the creators of the construct. And so I think that the Matrix itself is in reference to what is the construct, what is the soft reality that we live in. And that soft reality is also bounded by hard reality. As we were saying before, you have this set of rules, which are hard reality, that as far as we can know can't be broken. But then you also have the set of rules, which are soft reality. And in your own mind, in your own mind's eye, you have your model of reality, and you're trying to navigate that space. And so I think the Matrix is trying to tell people, like, your ability to manipulate the construct depends on your ability to see the Matrix, and it also depends on your belief. How much do you believe in yourself to be able to see reality and then manipulate it and create what you want? And that's why Neo was the one, because as they were saying, the one was this person who was born in the Matrix who could completely manipulate it to whatever that person saw fit. And that was that was like what Neo was supposed to be able to be, was that person who could completely manipulate the construct.
Yeah, and even all through the movie, and I guess it kind of brings me back to, I want to say maybe our second or third episode in the first season, where we were trying to ask the question, are we in a simulation? I wonder what episode that was.
That was the second episode. Are we in a simulation? Yeah.
And so the question, are we in a simulation? It comes in. It pops up in my head whenever I watch The Matrix, because one of the things Morpheus did when he first met Neo was to kind of get him to understand that, look, these two worlds, they're almost like Russian dolls that live inside of each other. So one thing always affects the other. One thing interacts with the other. So if you look at the scene where they had that fight when they were sparring in dojo,
I was gonna bring that up.
And then Neo was bleeding, and then he said something like, "Oh, I thought it wasn't real."
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, I think and Morpheus' response was, "Your mind makes it real." And it's like, yes,
yeah.
Actually, that makes absolute sense.
Yep. And one thing I like about that scene is when Morpheus is trying to get Neo to reach his potential on how he can manipulate, because like in that sparring session is all simulation, and so he's like, you think that's air you're breathing? And so when he's trying to tell Neo to hit me, he says, quit trying to hit me and hit me. He's saying, like, your speed and everything that you're capable of in this space, your mind has been conditioned to believe that the rules of this space restrict what you're capable of. But what you need to understand is that this is all just computer code. It's just a simulation and that none of this is real. As long as your mind believes it's real, then it will limit what you're capable of. And so what he's trying to tell Neo is, look, I just told you that none of this is real. It's all simulation, and that your speed and everything depends on what you believe. So quit accepting the world that's been around you, and then understand that you can manipulate this thing. And I think that this is like an assertion of conscious awareness, because everyone knows what it's like to be out in public. And say that you're out in public and in your mind, you just feel like dancing. Like, oh man, you have a song in your heart that you just really want to dance to. But because you're in public, you stop yourself from doing so. And so you think, I can't do that. That's not allowed. That's not socially acceptable. That will be weird. But the thing is that social acceptance, that is like the simulation of the sparring room that they're in. It's like, those constraints exist, but they're not real. They're not real in that you can just dance right now if you want. Yeah. And your inability to do so is because of your inability to fight against the restrictions of the social norms that are placed. And I think that that's a large portion of what the Matrix is. It's a metaphor for the restrictions that you place on yourself that come from expectation of society. And one's ability to move past those expectations and to do what you want in spite of them is the ability to understand that I am the creator of my reality, and I can do what I want. I can manipulate this. The construct is not a hard restriction. It is a soft restriction. It exists in soft reality.
I think there's so much we talk about on the podcast that really, ties in to the Matrix. And I rewatched it again. I rewatched the first one again probably a week ago or so. Mm-hmm. And
I watched it a couple of days ago. Yeah,
it's still so fresh in my mind because, do you remember the scene where, and this is probably a pretty good one that you love, where Neo was sitting right next to Cypher. Actually, Cypher is probably my second favorite character in that entire movie.
Yeah.
Cypher is the dude who, sold them out or whatever.
Yeah, he betrays them.
He had like such a great level of acceptance of how everything was. Everything was set up between the Matrix and the real world and Zion. He probably was the most accepting person in the entire group, because if you remember when he was making the deal with the Agent Smith dude and he was eating that steak and was like, I know the steak is not real, but whatever. Mm-hmm. Yes, and I felt like he's kind of gotten to that point where like we try to describe in the visual we used for that episode, Are We in a Simulation, where it's like it was the box and then there was another box. This dude has realized, that's just what it is.
Yeah.
And the scene where he was sitting right next to Neo and the typical Matrix green code was going up and down on the screen. Mm-hmm. And then Neo asked him, how can you read that? And it was like, I don't even see that anymore.
Yeah.
I just see blonde, brunette, man, woman. That's what I see. And I wondered to myself, like, this is where we are. That's how our interface has evolved to where we are interacting with this conceptual space. Mm-hmm. But we're not seeing those numbers.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm making it like we're not. Like if you go into the Matrix, you are interacting with the code, but you're not seeing the code. The code is there.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm making this like the code is always there.
Yeah.
But and that's another way I kind of see a reality from a designer standpoint. I see it almost as a user interface problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the Donald Hoffman.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think Cypher was trying to explain. Like, I don't see those lines of code anymore. I just see blonde, brunette. This is just my regular life.
To put this into perspective of coding, when you talk about coding languages, you talk about them in terms of levels. So a high level coding language doesn't mean that it's like sophisticated. It actually means it's less sophisticated. The higher level of coding language it is, the more it's using words and ideas for the syntax of its code that are more consistent with how you'd speak colloquially. And then as the lower level the code gets, the more you're starting to talk at like binary levels. Like you're at the level of like, okay, what's the configuration of the actual computer chip? Like what's the actual configuration? You're talking about like, I think assembly is one of the lowest level computing languages you can work with. And so in our day-to-day lives, when we are interacting with reality, we're usually using a higher level language. You know, like I was saying in the last episode, you're modeling sadness. So like, the idea of being sad is a conceptualization of the universe. Like it's a conceptualization of a state of the universe. But when you're breaking it down in terms of its positions and its momentums, and you're looking at degrees of freedom as defined by physics, or you're breaking it down like a computer scientist would, or a computer programmer, where it's all just zeros and ones. It's all just binary. Like everyone here is watching Futurama and seeing the computers speaking in binary, and they all know it's like, oh, they're talking about reality at a very fundamental level, at a very low level. And so when Cypher's talking about seeing the code, he's saying like, look, I see this at its most foundational level as information. Because information is the bottom turtle. Like, obviously, if you're trying to program a computer, you're going to conceptualize it in terms of computer code, which is designed to break things down into binary, which is the conceptualization of a configuration that it then uses to rearrange the configuration of the actual physical hardware to, you know, bring a specific state into existence. And if you are constructing an entire reality on a computer, you're basically looking at it all in terms of information. So that's like the lowest level form of conceptualizing reality.
Form of it.
Yeah. And so your ability to conceptualize it at that level gives you a higher degree of control and understanding of what it is you're looking at. And so he doesn't see a blonde and stuff. He just sees the code. He sees the matrix.
So to him, that's just what it is. And I love that character because, you know, his willingness to go back into the matrix resonated, because I wonder, you know, when Morpheus offered Neo that choice of the red pill or the blue pill, and, you know, basically what Cypher is saying is he took the red pill, he saw it, and he wants to take the blue pill and go right back.
Yeah.
And we can go on forever and kind of strip this away, but it kind of goes back to a lot of the Eastern philosophy ideas of where, you know, they ask questions like, what's the difference between dreaming and, you know,
being awake,
actually waking up, you know, in your reality? And Cypher is like, look, I know this steak is not real, but guess what? It's a
he
steak.
wants to go back into a dream
he wants to go
state.
back into
and
it.
That's actually one thing that he pointed out, was that he felt Morpheus lied to him, and he was like, look, you say I'm free. I think he said this specifically. He says, I say I'm free in this space. He's like, but I'm just doing what he's telling me to do. I wake up, you know, I have to eat this drool. I'm just doing what he says. Like, this feels more fake than it was when I was in the Matrix.
Yes.
Like, this feels more like I'm like less free, and I'm more in a dream world than when I was in the Matrix. So why not go back and actually have like good food and just not remember any of this stuff, and just
and he actually did not even want to remember any of it.
Yeah.
It makes you, it really does make you think that, you know, there's probably people who would rather that choice, would rather just, you know, remain at that level of, you know, unawareness and just float through the matrix.
Yeah.
Because as opposed to what? Deal with the gruel and the waking up and doing exactly what Morpheus wants, or is the easy path.
Yeah, and that's something that when he's taking Neo through that simulation with the blonde, so he sees the blonde and he turns into an agent. During that scene, Morpheus is explaining that a lot of people depend on the Matrix, and a lot of people will fight to preserve it. And again, I think that when you look at the Matrix as a metaphor for the structures of society, then you can think of the agents as being elites. because he's saying like the agents, they're the ones who have all the keys. They have access to all the doors. They can control and manipulate the Matrix. And so you have to think about the way our society is structured. And if you're someone who is on the Supreme Court, or you're someone who is working at the edges of finance, of like finance law, and so you know the edges of our economic systems.
Like you're in charge of the Federal Reserve, for example.
Your ability, like a ruling from the Supreme Court, think about how that ripples through all society. The Supreme Court makes a decision, and then suddenly the entire structure of the law ripples through society. It's like, oh, gay marriage is legal now. Suddenly it wasn't, and now it is. They just completely changed reality because they are at the point of deciding what is real and what is not real. And when you're elite, you have access to levers of control of what is real and what isn't real that the masses don't have. And so I think that the agents are meant to represent elites who have significant control on what reality is. And so I think a lot of what Neo is purpose is, it's the purpose of trying to see what the structure of reality is and being able to understand that it's not fixed and that you have to identify where there's freedom to create.
Yes.
And once you can actually see the Matrix, then you can see, there's a hole over there that, that thing's not fixed. I can manipulate this, I can manipulate that, and you can start to create your reality around you when you can see.
You can start to see the edges of what you can manipulate or not. But I wonder though, now that I think about it, do you actually think there was anything special about Neo?
Yes, I do. What I think was special about Neo was one, and this is something Eunice pointed out, is that I think she was saying, and someone can confirm this who's completely knowing everything about the movie, but I think all the people who were unplugged, they were all like computer programmers. Like they were all people who are working and manipulating reality at the level of information. And so they are people who can think in a way to where they are privy to be able to see the Matrix. They're able to see the code.
Okay, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah, so I think that's one way in which he was special. But I think the other way in which he was special is that he's able to manipulate his own mind. And I think that this is like one of the most foundational things about the Matrix and how it's set up, is that what you believe matters more in that movie Matrix world than it even matters in our world, because in the Matrix, it is all just code. And so the thing is, and this is emphasized throughout the entire movie, is that even though Morpheus and everyone else knows it's code, it's hard to convince your mind this is all code and I can just manipulate it. This is why Morpheus was like, with the whole point of the jump test, of jumping from one end of it to the next. When you live in the Matrix, you are conditioned to think the Matrix is real. It is not an easy feat to transfer your mind from a configuration in which you think the Matrix is real to a configuration in which you think it's all just code and I can manipulate it. And so every single person, when they're trying to jump from one building to the next, they're still constrained by their belief that the Matrix is real. And because of that, they can't let go to understand what they're fully capable of by jumping from one side to the next.
This is just so obvious. Like, there was that scene where, Morpheus, Neo had said something like, why do my eyes hurt? And, Morpheus being as cool as ever, that's because you've never used them before.
Yeah.
And that just made me chuckle, because it's like, it's the same thing, to where once you unplug, you don't instantly go from seeing things as it is to, like you said, accepting that this is just code that I can manipulate.
Yes.
And so he's never used his eyes before, quote unquote, according to what Morpheus was saying, because he hasn't really seen it as he should have been seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, think of it this way. Here's what makes Neo special. Here's the second thing that makes Neo special. Think of it this way. Imagine you are an MMA fighter, because of course I like using this analogy. And imagine that in the gym, you are a killer. Like, you can just smash the mats. You have the technique down. You have cardio. You're just a machine. But then when you go to fight in the big lights, an actual fight in like the UFC in the cage, you have all these anxieties that show up. And now suddenly you have this extra pressure that's preventing you from actualizing your potential. And so this anxiety thing that's sitting on your shoulder. And actually this anxiety thing is a subsystem within your system. It's like a spirit within your system that emerges, and you start spending all this processing power thing about what if I get knocked out? What if I get tired? And all this stuff, it's like a weight. It's like a computational weight. You are now spending your computational energy focusing on your anxieties as opposed to just tapping into your full potential. Yeah. And so being able to go to a point where you have to go on stage and perform, and then actually being able to perform because you believe in yourself, that is that believing in yourself is not easy. It requires you to know yourself such that you can navigate around the anxiety, and you can harness the pressure, and you can harness the anxiety so that you can realize your full potential. And so Neo was exceptional at doing that. He was exceptional at accepting the idea that the Matrix isn't real, and that he is actually capable of moving as fast as the agents. There's nothing stopping anyone from moving as fast as the agents except for their own restriction in their mind.
And which is why I always thought that Neo wasn't special, because I'm like, anybody could have been Neo.
Yes.
If you just believed.
Yes.
Anybody could have been Neo.
But that's the thing. The Matrix is trying to tell you how difficult it is to break the own chains in your mind. It's the same thing as the scene with the spoon. When he goes into when he goes into the spoon, and the kid tells him that you have to accept that there is no spoon. Because again, we have to understand that what we see isn't reality. What we see is an imagination of reality that's constructed by being human. That's what we see. Yeah. And so
it's a solution to a user interface problem. That's what I call it.
Yes, as Donald Hoffman was saying. And so when you see the spoon, it is a model of something physical, and an octopus is going to model it differently. And so in the Matrix world, because in the Matrix world is actually a soft reality. It's an actual simulation, and everyone in that world, Neo and Morpheus, they all know that. They know that spoon is literally just code. It's not there. And so if Neo is to manipulate the spoon, then he has to be able to, then this is what the character says, you have to manipulate yourself. And so what he has to be able to do is manipulate his own perception. He has to be able to accept the fact that the spoon is just code, it's not really there. And so his ability to manipulate his own perception and truly accept it. There's a difference between knowing and actually being able to truly accept that that spoon's not there so that you can bend it. And that's what makes someone special in the Matrix world. And that's what Morpheus says after Trinity and Neo save Morpheus, and Neo pulls Trinity out of the helicopter. Morpheus says to Neo, there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. That's what makes Neo special. He can walk the path. He can actually manipulate his own mind to walk the path.
I agree. And it just, you referenced the MMA earlier, and I was watching what fight was I watching? I was watching one of Israel's older fights when he was a kickboxer.
Yeah.
And it suddenly hit me that the MMA, and this is probably true for a lot of other sports, but the MMA, for you to be successful in that ring, you have to have a good grasp on reality.
Oh, yes, exactly.
You can't. It's so obvious to me when you see people who emerge as champions. This is beyond going to the gym and punching every day. This is beyond lifting weights. This is beyond making weight. This is beyond steroids. This literally is a game of your mind being able to create an environment where you can actually go into the ring and perform.
Yes.
And you have to be aware of what you can do, what you can't do, the limits of you have to be in tune with all that, or you will just get beat up.
You have to have a high level of conscious awareness, because you have to be able to manipulate. Like it's basically, and this is why I like Evangelion so much. This is why Evangelion is so profound to me.
I haven't seen Evangelion, man. You keep saying it.
It's so profound, man, because the whole point is they're using literal metaphor. In Evangelion, it's about a kid who is who is piloting a giant biological computer that he has to be able to synchronize with so that he can manipulate it to actually like perform and fight these angel monsters. And so his whole, like, he is a subsystem, the consciousness part. He's a subsystem within this larger system, the Evangelion, and it's all about, and the Evangelion is a biological computer that he has to synchronize with. What does that not sound like what it means to be human? It's a literal metaphor of existing. And so in what was the point? Why did I bring up Evangelion?
MMA.
Yeah, and so you can imagine that you are piloting an Ava. Like that's basically reality. You're piloting an Ava, and you have to know, like, to be consciously aware is to know how to program the Ava to perform how you want it to perform. And so you have to have a model of the Ava. You have to know, okay, when I think about when you're manipulating your own mind to go from happy or sad. You can manipulate it through thought, what you imagine. So just a good example, and I know this example is a little crass, but imagine like the classic comedy of a teenage boy who is asked to go in the front of the classroom and he has a boner, right? So now he has to go in front of the entire classroom, and he's like, "I need this thing to go down. I can't have this thing up when I walk up in front of the class." And so, what do you start thinking of? You start thinking of baseball. You start thinking of anything non-sexual as possible to make that thing go away. And so, it's that level at which you're trying to manipulate yourself when you're trying to do pretty much anything. And so when you're trying to manipulate yourself to go into a world championship and fight some monster like Alexander Volkanovski, that dude's mind is so rock solid. It's like, how do you penetrate that thing? And so being able to have that connection with your system, that synchronization with your Ava, so that you can go out there and perform through the anxiety and harness all that power and stuff like that, you have to have a knowledge of self to do that. You have to know how to pilot the Ava.
Yeah. And I think that's what I was trying to get at with MMA is like you have to have a knowledge of self that is so profoundly, like you have to be confident in it enough before you even step in the cage. Because if you don't even have that confidence of self, you will get rocked, man.
Yes.
And I don't think you can, like, look at that fight we saw. What's the name?
Justin Gaethje versus Michael. Oh no, not Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler. What are you talking about?
Amanda Nunes and
Juliana Pena.
Juliana Pena. Yeah, you could just tell, like, it's a whole level of mental strength that comes with taking on that craft. And lately when I watch it now, I have so much respect for them because you have to have that level of self-awareness to do it.
Yeah.
You have to know how to, like you say, control the Ava that you're in.
Yep.
You know. And it's all in your mind.
You have to know the inputs. What do I think here? And don't give up. And that's the thing is, like, this is why I would think it's interesting when you see a MMA fighter go and praise their God, when they're like, "Oh, all praise to God," and without God. Like, one of the things that I thought was interesting is the current lightweight champion is a guy named Charles Oliveira. And before his last fight was Dustin Poirier, in the Countdown series, it's like a video series where they kind of go over the person's story, to promote the fight. And he said something like, "If you don't believe in my God, like you don't believe my God exists."
I was there.
He's like, "Watch me, watch what I can do, and then tell, and that I am proof that my God exists." And what he's saying is, he's saying that my belief system, what I believe in, affects the art I can create. So when I go out there and perform, you have to know that I am relying on my belief in my God to create that art. So when he's operating his system, he's using his belief in Christianity to propel himself to manipulate and operate his Ava.
Yeah.
And so I
have to see that show, man.
People have to understand that when you're trying to manipulate your own mind, there is freedom. There's freedom to conceptualize what it means to operate yourself. There's freedom to conceptualize the idea that, oh, maybe I am just a community of myself. Like within myself, there are many spirits who I have relationships with that are trying to manipulate control for the system, and to be able to persevere through the suffering of being punched in the face and getting rocked and almost knocked out, and then still saying, "No, I'm not going to give up" to operate the system. That is not a small feat. Like that is, it's not easy to control your mind to that level.
To put this in perspective, I work freelance, and one of the things that I had to learn very early on when I started working for myself was, for one, I decided to pick a game where I kill what I eat.
You kill what you
or
eat?
Rather, I eat what I kill.
Oh, okay. What do you mean by that?
But it means I eat what I can kill. Like, I'm not going to work. I'm not going to an office and punching in and then getting paid at the end of 2 weeks.
Oh, I see. I
go into the bush,
I see.
kill a thing, and that's all I can eat. Oh, you didn't kill a thing today? Well, sorry, you're gonna starve today.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So there is no room for me to not get my mental strength up, because sometimes I will take on a project that I have never done before, and it's like, you gotta eat.
Yep.
So I need to like go through my process and try to put myself in a state of mind to create. And sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have to just keep at it. I have to sit there and make it work.
Yep.
Something my brother told me a couple years ago, and he probably forgot he told this to me.
Yeah.
I don't know how true it is, or I don't know if he was stating fact or whatever, but I do know that when I get into my moments where I'm like struggling to get something creative out, I always remember my brother told me, and this is my younger brother, he told me, you are one of the most creative people I know.
Yeah.
So every time you feel like you can't get it right, just remember that you are one of the most creative people I've ever met in my life. Yeah. And I consider my brother like a apex creator. Like, shit I can't even understand.
Apex creator,
so
I love it.
every time I'm like struggling, I always tell myself, you know what? You're good at this. Just go to your space and you will pull something off. It always works.
Yes.
And like it's all in your mind. We all have to get to that level of self-awareness where we are going through life aware of how much control we have over the system.
And this is something that I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think that's what Morpheus tried to drill into Neo.
Yes.
When they first met. That was what he was trying to get him. Like, you have more control over this system than you know.
That is exactly where I was going to go with it. The whole point is that it comes down, and this is going to be kind of interesting, but it comes down to faith. And this is where, in my own system of thought, where I understand the purpose and value of faith. Because remember, everything has to be balanced. So you have this concept of faith. When do you use it? Do you use faith when there is data that can be gathered where you can have trusted data? No, you use the trusted data. You don't use faith then. But when you're trying to do something like become a world champion at something, there's nothing guaranteed. There's nothing guaranteed that when you pursue this path, it will work. There's a certain thing where you're trying to create and bring something into the future. And so there's a certain point where you have to have faith. And so what are you having faith in? You're having faith that the experiences you've had in the past have prepared you for this. You're having faith that the things that you value that determine what decisions you make are the correct things to value. You're having faith that you have, through your years, have been basically worshiping something that can get you through the hard times, something that in your mind you can rely on, that will, like as you were just saying, you're relying on the fact that, you know what, my system has demonstrated that it's creative and that it will get through this. And you have to be able to rely on those things and have this faith that you can bring this into existence. So when you listen to Neo, Morpheus trying to coach Neo into becoming the one, he's constantly telling him that you have to believe. You have to have faith. Quit trying to hit me and hit me. You have to believe in yourself. Yeah. And so when you're going to battle against the construct, basically the norms and the expectations of society, when you're going against that, you have to be able to have faith in yourself that you can go out, that you can break down the rules, the constraints of society. You can break those down, go into the wilderness and be an apex creator. You have to believe that. If you don't believe that about yourself, you will fail. You have to believe in yourself.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you're trying to do. Like, you could be trying to be a world champion. Like you said, nothing is guaranteed. But imagine trying to be a world champion when you believe you can't do it or when you believe you can do it. Like, it's just, it's a no-brainer. Why would you approach this goal? I want to climb Mount Everest. Mm-hmm. You don't take up a goal like that and just not believe in yourself.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, exactly. So we should be approaching life that way when we want to, make decisions. Like,
but it requires taking risks though. There's a huge amount of risk from leaving the comfort of the construct, of leaving the comfort of the matrix.
if you love something enough, you have to be willing to take a risk.
You have to be willing to take the risk. And that's the thing, is there's a certain point where this ability to believe in yourself, to take the risk, it's like telling you, it's basically telling you how much faith you have in your God, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
How much faith do you have in yourself? How much faith do you have that the things that were taught to you by your parents,
your experiences, your strategy guides, all that shit at some point.
Yeah, and the behavior that you've been cultivating through the decisions you've made. Because every time you make a decision, it changes what configuration you're in. Are you, every decision you make affects your habits. It affects how you respond to stimuli. And so, do you have faith that you've been making the right decisions and that you have been going down a path that will prepare you for what's coming down the pike in the future? Mm-hmm. Do you have faith in yourself?
And you alone can actually determine that. I don't want to get into a conversation about false trophies and whatnot because we did that last week. But even in my day-to-day life now, because of the kind of work that I do, when I pick up a piece of literature, I pick up a magazine, or I see a postcard or a billboard, I see them differently now. Mm-hmm. It's almost like I'm looking at the code.
Yes.
Because I know that this is the code that I need to learn to, be able to kill what I eat.
Yeah. Just like in the Matrix when they dance, he asked Trinity, "Can you fly that helicopter?" And she downloads the data to be able to do it. And she goes, "I can now." It's like, okay, well, which data do I download? Can I download the data?
Yeah,
you have to be able to download the data so that you can now fly the helicopter.
That's what I do, and that's part of what you were saying. Your experiences, the things you have done before, and all the work you've put in has prepared you for this challenge. Yep. So in my world, when I get a new project, I have to believe in myself that my experiences, all the things I've done, the side projects I've done, the personal work, all of that stuff has prepared me. Yep. To take this on. I can't approach it if I don't do that.
Yeah, and it's exactly true. And this is something that Justin Gaethje mentions is he says, when he goes to fight, he knows what he has to do to prepare. And so I think if there was some interview or something he was talking about when a fighter comes up to him and is scared, and Justin's like, well, what did you do? Did you party? Did you not eat the right things? Did you not train? He's like, because if you didn't do those things, you should be scared. Yes. Because you were supposed to be preparing for this moment. If you know in the back of your head you're not doing the stuff you're supposed to, then you should be scared.
Yes.
And that's the thing is it's well, what am I supposed to do? What is the right things to do? What should I focus on? What should I eat? These are all the questions that you have to ask yourself when you're saying, what do you value? What do you believe in? What's your version of reality? Because all that stuff you believe determines what decisions you make, which determines which configurations you build in yourself, which habits you build in yourself, which data you have, which data you've downloaded in the past. Because everyone's downloading different data, and the different data you download then emerges a unique person. Because that unique person has a unique set of experiences and information that they've constructed through their life that will make them respond differently to stimuli than somebody else. Which is the definition of spirit and how we've defined it, how you program the universe and how you're programmed by the universe.
Yep.
What's the code? What's the correct code?
Yeah. It's so interesting how I never expected that we'll be able to talk about MMA and the Matrix in the same vein. But, it makes a lot of sense. I can't imagine that, you stepping into the ring as a conditioned, well-prepared fighter. It's not like you going into the Matrix to go fight an agent. You're stepping into there at that point, and you're believing that, I am capable of doing this. I'm capable of taking this person. I'm capable of beating this person. And all of this is simply based on, what exactly like you said, what are your experiences and all the things that you have been able to gather, all the information that you have in you has prepared you for this moment.
Yeah.
And for someone like me who, has no option but to eat what I kill, I can't not keep this in mind every time.
Yeah.
I wake up every morning and I just have to go into it knowing, you know what? Yeah, I could pull this off.
Yep.
And it always works.
And it always works.
Always works. It always works.
Dude, it's funny because we talk pretty openly on this show about our own anxieties and lack of belief and the suffering that we go through when we create. But the reason why I feel comfortable communicating this to people is because this is just what it means to be human. Is everyone not going through this self-doubt and anxiety, overcoming it, and then moving on to because
pushing
through that you can create and bring into existence what you want. That's just regular life. That is just what it means to live a life. And so I don't think it's any deep secret that should be held from anyone because it's just what it means to exist. And yeah, I just it's just this whole idea of believing in yourself.
It sounds cliche, but I promise you it's a key to so much.
Listen to any person. Like if you listen to like Floyd Mayweather or anybody, listen to anyone who accomplishes something significant. They're all telling you this. You have to believe in yourself. They're not hiding the ball. They're telling you the code.
But it's almost like one of those things where you hear it so much.
Yeah.
The actual weight of that word is lost in so many people. But I have to do this every time I get a new project.
Yeah.
The anxiety bubbles up like, okay, what if I can't replicate that thing? It could be someone who saw something I did for someone else.
Yeah.
And the person's like, oh yeah, I really like what you did here. I'm looking for blah, blah, blah. I know I can't give that person the exact same thing I gave the other person. Because it's like, are you just replicating your old shit for me?
Yeah.
But I have to believe in myself that I can create another thing.
Yep.
Because all of the past experiences I've had creating those other things can make me create this other thing again. Because I can.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like one thing that I've realized in my own emotional and spiritual journey is that anxiety and like worry, it eats computational power.
Oh, it does.
So so the more you spend on that, the more time you are focused on that, as opposed to putting all your computational energy into just creating.
Doing that thing.
Which is exactly why Neo couldn't hit Morpheus. It's because he wasn't letting go of his vast conditioning of the Matrix telling him this is reality. He wasn't letting go of that. And so that other thing of believing that this was reality was consuming his processing power and limiting his ability to move optimally so he can hit Morpheus. And so there are several instances in my life where I've had a high resonant state of being. And this is something I talked to my friend Howard with about. I don't know if people understand how much energy they waste when they're just breathing, like how to breathe optimally. I remember a few times where I was in a pretty meditative state and I had just got done with work. This was during the pandemic. And I remember thinking about all the things I needed to get done. It's like, did I get that done? Did I get this done? And I was like, making sure that I was safe, essentially. I was making sure, all right, am I safe right now? Can I just relax? And I remember thinking, you know what? No, I did get everything done. I did get everything done. And I was able to start relaxing. And I was watching this fight. And these two fighters, like they were tuned in that day. You could tell that they were both, there was no anxiety. They were just believing in themselves and they were tuned in.
Going for it.
And I remember I was watching them and I was just relaxing. And what it was a state in which all the other spirits, for lack of a better term, in my system, they were starting to harmonize with each other. One wasn't saying, did you get that done? They were all relaxing and they were starting to relax and chill. And I remember I was just breathing in air to the point where I didn't have these coiled up tension of, did I get this done? And I was like truly relaxing. And the fluidity with which I was breathing in air and then exhaling it through my nose, and how much extra oxygen I could take in, it was like, what is this state of being that I'm in right now?
What is this? Yeah, there's a whole litany of literature about that, about how people are not even letting themselves breathe right.
And that's what I wanted to say. It's like when Neo's not hitting Morpheus, he's not in the breathing optimally state. The high level conscious state is when you're in that breathe optimally state. It was like my brother was telling me about whenever he used to go play basketball. And he would get into this mode of resonance with his system that was so intense that it felt like an out-of-body experience. Like, it felt like he was watching himself do this thing. I think this is consistent with high levels of conscious awareness and conscious control of the system. You have configured the system in a high state of harmony between all the spirits, such that you have released the computational power and resource that is being dormant in your system. You've released it, and now you are just moving through the matrix. You are just navigating the thing fluidly. And I can only imagine how often fighters get in that state when they're fighting.
You have to. This is my day-to-day life. I need to always put myself in that place, or I struggle to create.
Yeah, you have to find a way to conjure that state of being.
Yeah, I have to. And it's not something special. A huge part of it is you believing you can do it, and you just working hard at the thing that you want to do and taking a risk.
And you don't have a choice. As you're saying, if you don't find a way to program yourself, to program your Ava to be in that state, you will starve.
I will starve, and that is the game I chose to play. Okay.
Can you imagine what it's like for like people who were hunter-gatherers back in the day, and the level of resonance they would have to be with their system to be able to, I can only imagine how much they were not worrying about, does Jerry think I'm cool or something like that. They're like, no, I have to use all my computational resources on catching that pig, or my family and I are going to starve.
Exactly.
Like, I can only imagine how resonant they were with their systems back then. Yeah.
You have to be. You have to be, even when you notice this about hunters, when they go into like hunt, they are aware of their surroundings, how much noise they're making. Like,
you have to get there.
I don't know. It might sound cliche, but a lot of it, that's where, if you talk to a lot of creators or people who have been able to accomplish something great, like you said, one of the most common things that they say is you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in yourself. They're giving you the code. They're not just saying that. That's actually the truth. And
another way to put this in perspective, because so there's a couple analogies or a couple things that I've drawn from that data that's out there that people can confirm and observe, to kind of put this in perspective of what it means to actually be able to manipulate, to be able to see the matrix, or to see the model of yourself, to literally be able to see the human spirit, to be able to model it in your mind and actually have a high fidelity model of it, such that you can manipulate it to be in the state you want. Because ask yourself this: if you're a fighter about to go on stage and you knew exactly which thoughts to have, which muscles to contract, what to do exactly to take yourself from a state of anxiety to a state of optimal belief in optimal control over your system, who wouldn't do it? So you have to ask yourself, if they're not doing it, why are they not doing it? Well, it's because they currently do not know the code, or they're incapable of knowing, all right, I'm feeling this way now I do this, and now I do that, and now I do this. And that slow manipulation of when X then Y, input and outputs, until you go to the state of anxiety to optimal self. If you have to actually know how to do that. And so you can look at something like that monk who put himself on fire and just sat there. Think about what it takes to be in a state of being in which you're just getting signals from every spirit in your system. They're all telling you, run,
get some water,
find water, save yourself. It's just screaming at you. And that guy is able to say, I know the code of this system so much that I can bend them all to my will and have it just do exactly what I want, is to sit there. That is a state of being. And there are so many states of being in your mind and your system that I think most people don't even have any clue exist. And this is what I think it is to do like spiritual work. It is to build a relationship with your system, with your Ava, to the point where you are so consciously aware and in control of it that you can bring any state of being into existence through sheer will of your mind.
Yep.
This is what Neo has to accomplish to become the one.
And I think that, that is the overarching theme in that movie, is this idea that we watch this, hacker / whatever thing he was doing back in the day before he met Morpheus, go on this journey from where, because he seemed like a very anxious, uncertain person when you first meet him. And you can now watch him transition to this dude who's using his hand to stop bullets and going blah, 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 left, right. Yeah. It's a whole journey that I think anyone is capable of.
Yes. And in fact, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I think that that's one of the biggest things about the Matrix that I want people to watch it with a different light is, yes, there's some things that make Neo special, but everyone is capable of that.
Yes. And this is what it means, as we've been saying in the past, when we go on Instagram and we see people doing great feats of art and physical manipulation and just showing what the human system is capable of. When you see a Neo, when you see someone who's in tune with their system and know how to control it, they can do things that you can go, if that person can do it, then I can do it. Yeah. And their art inspires you. And I think this is why the average IQ of humanity goes up over time, is because the more interconnected we are, and the more capable we are of preserving structure, so saving data of what happened in the past, the more we can say, oh, well, we did that. Someone was able to sprint that, was able to run that, back 50 years ago. The whole thing is like 13 seconds faster the way they can run that, sprint that same distance now.
If you look through the Olympics history, you could see that the 100 meters sprint time is reducing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We didn't get alien people who had 4 legs. It's the same humans with 2 legs. But like you said, we get more data. And I think you're right. Like being able to see that, this is possible. We could run 100 meters in 7 seconds this year. Well, I guess I could do 6. I guess I could push my body to 5. Yep.
Yep. And that's why it's important to be able to construct as many Neos, as a society can, is because the more Neos you have demonstrating what the human spirit is capable of,
the more Neos you have, the more Neos you will have.
You will make, the more Neos you'll make, because and this is what legends do. So you think about a legendary spirit, you think about someone who has demonstrated a great feat, and then you're like, oh, if they did it in the past, then I can try to reproduce but do it better. And so legends inspire the creation of new legends. And this is just how the system as itself spreads its art to collectively advance itself to become better and sharper and stronger and smarter over time.
So I don't know, guys. I think the one thing I want everyone to remember from this episode is anyone could be Neo.
Yes.
There's so much about him that made him the one. But those things are not things that are impossible to find in everyday people like you and I. We can be Neo if we only just believe and work on it.
And actually know can actually see the matrix. That's a really essential part, because the thing is, you can believe in yourself and your model of reality can be complete nonsense. You have to actually be able to see the matrix. Because if you can't see the matrix, then you're going to believe in yourself and you're going to start some algorithm. You're going to start some algorithm that has nothing to do with how reality actually works, and you're just going to fall on your face.
I believe in myself. I'm running track for like a whole month, and then I jump into the ring with Just Engage.
That's not gonna. Yeah, exactly. So in that regard, I think it does make him special. But whether or not someone can see the matrix, you have to look at what they create. Yeah. Okay, Israel Adesanya. Okay, this guy I think he calls himself player number 1. You can tell that he's like in his mind, he's imagining himself as Neo, and you just listen to his interviews, and he's talking about how whenever, like, the idea of being in front of crowds and just going in there and relaxing and being in it, like you can tell the entire time he's training his mind to fight, to be able to navigate around that anxietiness, the anxiety of being in front of a crowd. I think he said at one point in time that he will walk around the house and stub his toe, and everyone knows what it's like to have the radiating pain of like your toe being stubbed and then just reacting to it immediately, like clenching up. But you can also say in your mind, you know what, this isn't pain, this is something else. And then you can say, and then instead of clenching up and reacting to the pain, you can try to manipulate your mind to believe it's something else, and then you can examine it. You can just examine the feeling of stubbing your toe without the filtering it through the pain. And he's like, I'm training my mind. It's like, he says this stuff. Like, you can tell that this dude can see the matrix.
And we hear things like this a lot from people who create, amazing piece of art or are able to accomplish great things. And most of it is them just being aware, self-aware, and then just believing in their own ability and like you said, being able to see the matrix, which is AKA see the code of whatever it is you're trying to achieve.
And be able to, to be able to actually model it, to actually build a high fidelity model of the thing. Mm-hmm. But, and I know that we're going a little long, but there's actually a couple more things I want to try to fit in here. And these are kind of like consciousness exercises that I actually do myself.
Okay.
So there's a couple that I like to do. One of them is going out in the cold. So where I'm from Wichita, Kansas. I don't, Chicago tries to say it's the windy city, but Wichita's pretty damn windy, man. I would love to challenge whether or not Chicago's more windy than Wichita because the wind there. Anyway, I remember when I was in Wichita State, I would have to park very far from the building, so I'd have to walk to the building, and it can get really cold in Wichita. And I remember feeling the wind like it's passing through your body, like it's just piercing through your system, like you can feel that wind. And of course, the first thing you want to do is clench up and shiver. Now imagine not doing that. Imagine like I was saying with stubbing your toe, you relax. You don't shiver, you relax, you stand up, and you just accept the feeling of the wind piercing through your body, and you don't try to hide from it. You just try to acknowledge it as a feeling. It's not pain, it's not suffering, it's just a feeling. Convincing your system to not shiver and to not like tense up, that is an ability to control the system. So that's one of the things, like that's one example of something I like to do to try to have this consciousness training to manipulate the system. Another thing I love to do is manipulate my desire to like eat something, for example. So, I try to stay pretty healthy. I try to, in my own mind, keep track of how many sweets and sugars I've been eating, and then have an idea of capping how much I take in a day. And so there can be some days in which it's like, okay, I've been exercising lately. I haven't had any sweets today. I'm allowed to have this cookie, or I'm allowed to have this candy bar. So then I'll pick up the candy bar, the cookie. My mind, my mouth is salivating. I have completely committed to the idea that I'm going to eat that cookie. My mind it's already a done deal. And so all I have to do is pick it up and put it in my mouth. And then in the back of my mind, there's this thing that says, you don't have to eat that cookie. You could put that cookie down and just walk away. And so what I like to do is I like to take those little signals in the back of my mind and amplify them. And like, oh, wait a minute, every part of my system is already committed to eating this cookie, but I could put it down. And it's like, can I amplify that signal, literally put the cookie down and walk away?
I think,
and what that does...
What's funny about you saying that, I feel like, and I don't know if Christians are going to correct me, I think there's actually a verse in the Bible that alludes to that.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I'm unaware of this.
There's a verse in the Bible that says something like that little voice in the back of your head is the one you should listen to. Because sometimes like your body is sending you all of these signals, but there's that little voice that might be the one that you should actually listen to, and that would actually wrest control of all the others. So there's something in the Bible about that. I gotta look it up, but it's in there.
Oh yeah, we should talk about it next time. But I can only imagine an MMA fighter. Like, it's just, listen, this is why I love MMA so much, because it's reality. It's real. It's all real. There's nothing fake there. These people can't fake,
And like for me, I feel like you got me into it. And that is why I love it.
Yeah.
Because there's no room for bullshit in there. You will get punched out. There's no room. And I love it. Yeah, that's
you get your head kicked off. There's no pretending there. It's all real. It's just reality. And this is actually one thing that I do to keep myself sane, especially in our current political environment, is I like to seek media that does not require me to have my defenses up. When I'm watching UFC, there's almost no political anything. I know that the value I'm getting out of this is all based off of watching humans perform great feats and watching martial arts skill on display. So it's like, oh, what happened if I completely allow myself to be controlled by this? I love martial arts and I watch and I'm inspired by humanity. Okay, there's no real drawback there.
I'm not getting sold anything.
I'm not gonna find myself in a delusional state because I watched Justin Gaethje watch Michael Chandler. Like, I can just relax and enjoy it. I try to adjust the diet of the media I consume so that 90% of it is stuff like that. Like, I'm watching Gordon Ramsay. Okay, what happens when I watch Gordon Ramsay? I learn a lot about food, and I'm inspired by people overcoming their own like failures as people, whether I'm watching Kitchen Nightmares or something like that. And he goes in and he shows people their flaws, and then it's like, okay, they could be making stuff up and it could all be fake in the background because they're choosing what they show me. But at the end of the day, for the most part, the message they're always sending is the same one. Look your demons in the eye and overcome them. Persevere through hard times, and here's how you make food. It's like, all right, I'm safe in this space.
You can figure it out, and you'll watch some shows like that where something happens, maybe a dish got burned, and they have to remake it. You could see things like perseverance. You could see all of that, on display. So I definitely agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
And so you can only imagine how often you're watching an MMA fight and someone has convinced their mind, all right, I've done enough. Okay, now it's okay, I can give up. And I think Israel was saying this exact thing. Like, he could hear his mind telling him, okay, you've done enough, you can give up. And then there's like this little voice in the back of his mind, like, fuck that. I haven't done enough, I can't give up. And so you have to be able to amplify, like when you're getting punched in the face and you're getting smashed. Like the Gerald Meerschaert fight, that dude's mind, man, that shit was so inspiring. Watching that dude be on his back, completely flattened out, and you could see in his face like he's just struggling, he's tired, and then he's like, oh, now it's time to go for the sweep. And it's like to be able to control your system, to not give up, and to listen to that voice in the back of your mind, to not give up and to persevere. It's just amazing to watch these people and what they create, man.
That is Neo, pretty much.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
No, that's what it is. So before we go, I don't know if you want to discuss this one aspect about the Matrix that I think you will find interesting, because we were talking about the other day when you came to visit. And it's related to this idea of the meta. Remember, we were talking about the whole meta thing, and the Facebook meta. And there's a part where Agent Smith is confessing to Morpheus that he hates living in the Matrix. And he's talking about human civilization and how when they first created the Matrix, they tried to create like a heaven world in which there was no suffering or pain, and that the humans just outright rejected it completely. Like, they knew it was fake and they outright rejected it. And he was saying that there's a certain part to which humanity seems to filter their understanding of reality through suffering. Which I think makes sense, because you suffer when you create. If everything is given to you and you have complete freedom, then creating things means nothing, as we were saying before. And so, but he's talking about how so when they recreated the Matrix, they created the Matrix at the height of human civilization. He says, we created it at the height of your civilization. And he says, I'm calling it your civilization because that's when you guys were like, at your peak. But once you created AI and you allowed the AI to think for you, it became our civilization. This is like a quote verbatim from the Matrix. It became our civilization. And it's like, man, to think about how we are in a reality right now where we have these algorithms and artificial intelligence that are constantly manipulating our behavior and what we should see and how we should react and what we believe and what we think. And it's like, man, that movie is so ahead of its time to predict that, we're currently in a state where the algorithms are manipulating and controlling so much of our reality and what we think is real. That it's like, we should heed the warning, caution of this movie that's trying to tell you, like, hey, if you want to still have the civilization be yours, you can't just allow the algorithms to program you. You have to behave consciously.
And you're right, because like we always talk about our Instagram feeds and how if you don't make an intentional effort, you can't give up to the machine. And that's how I see it. Because like lately, I noticed that I watched one video of someone trying to do playing this prank where they will have how was it done? Something where they will give you some weights and then they'll take the weight away and then slam like a pie in your face or something like that. And I watched this one video and I just noticed Instagram just, say no more. We got more for you. And I had to actively go in, and what I noticed was eventually I started seeing more and more prank videos. So I would just get my phone and I would just be like, and I would just like give in, give into it. And just be like, wait, hold up. So I had to take that step back and go, not interested, because I know I can't let the machine just take over. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, but I want that agency. I want to be able to control what I see.
It's funny you say that, because I know sometimes I'll be on Instagram and I'll get in a loop where it's like, okay, I'm looking for something to like hit that nerve, and I'm just scrolling, and like while I'm doing it, at some point in time, I fell into the loop without realizing it, and then at some point, I realized I'm in the loop. I'm like, oh, I'm in the loop,
Yep.
I'm almost standing back and watching my system in the loop. I'm like, I'm in the loop. I gotta get out of the loop. I gotta get out of the loop, and it's like, all right, turn it off. But there's a certain point where I realized that at some point I had unconsciously fell into a loop, and then I recognized the loop, and then I have to pull myself out of it. And it was something that's interesting you said last time we were talking about this meta, and it just kind of like chilled me to my core. And you were talking about the advertisement where it was like, hey, show us all pictures of your mom.
It's so crazy.
Or explain that again. Explain that again.
You can call me a conspiracy theorist or whatever. I'm just the dude who observes a lot of things. What I noticed was when Facebook launched this meta thing, it wasn't up to like a couple of days after that. We started to get these Instagram stories that would have like a little quote, say something like, post a picture of you in elementary school or whatever. And people just repost that story with their own picture. So if you click on it, you will see like hundreds, often thousands of people who have actually repeated this same act. Almost like those chain letters we used to get in the emails back. Like, if you don't send this out, you will lose some money or whatever. So it creates this sort of chain where everybody just posts their pictures from their elementary school and just post it on there. And I'm sitting there to myself and I wondered, wait a minute, is no one concerned that all of this data that Facebook had no access to because it was all like pieces of paper in your living room? You guys took the time to get your phones out, take these pictures, and then send it over to Facebook again.
Yeah.
Is no one actually seeing what's going on here?
Well, it's like you were saying, like before, people are just kind of posting whatever random things they want to post. So you get kind of a smeared,
it's not clear
random
data.
set, but it's not clear data. But then if Facebook is just like, hey, post a picture of your high school that you went to, post a picture of your high school, and then everyone just posts a picture of high school. Like, oh, look at all this clear data we're getting.
And they just fill in the gaps.
And so, as we were saying before, for us as individuals, for us to manipulate our system, we need to be able to actually see the matrix. We actually have to have a model of our system that is high fidelity. The things we believe has to actually be consistent with the actual system. And so once you have that true data of the system, you can manipulate it.
That's what it is.
So now think about this whole meta stuff. If what you're saying is correct, in which there's like things that are saying something like everyone share pictures of your mother or everyone share pictures of this, they're just getting a lot of precise data about you, and now they can know which signals to send you to manipulate you to do what you want. And so now they are building the matrix, the construct of a model of you now they have more information to know how to manipulate you. And so it's like, yeah, that's pretty unnerving. And once you start understanding, because I think in the Social Dilemma, they talk about how, and this is like in this big movie on Netflix, The Social Dilemma, they talk about how in these tech companies, there's a degree to which they view people as just nodes on a computer. Oh, yeah. So now what you have to think of yourself as a human is that there's some manipulator somewhere who is just viewing you as a node, and they can just press a button on the computer, send out this signal, everyone do this. And now there's a large portion of the masses that are just doing this one thing now. And this is what I thought was interesting about the Matrix is when the computers made humans into these little pods, and they said that their purpose was to turn them into batteries. I think it would have made a lot more sense if they said that they were actually creating a giant computer with all of the humans, and that each human that was attached to the Matrix was actually a node to do these complicated computations because as individual computers, each human is actually a pretty impressive computer in its own right. And so if you can actually get a network of these interconnected, pretty sophisticated computers, then you can, and they're all just nodes on a giant computer, then you can just do all these really complex calculations as long as you know which signals to send, and then they just give you the data back. And it's like, oh, look at this giant computer I'm just manipulating. Do you want to be a node in a computer?
It's
That's it?
It's terrifying to me to see that, a lot more people are not aware of it because we're just basically filling in the gaps for Facebook. Like a lot of information they didn't have, they now have now. So it's almost like whenever I read online that Netflix cancels XYZ TV show, I don't even get mad anymore because I'm like, the data Netflix probably has on who's watching what is so good. You cannot even be mad. They're not gonna cancel a show that's making them money. No. They know how many people watched it. They know how many people watched only 5 minutes of it. How many people downvoted it. They know how much they spent on it. The data is precise. They're not fucking around.
The data has to be.
They're not. And so when we, start to dump all this, data to people like Facebook or these companies, again, call me a conspiracy theorist all you want, but this seems like a very easy way to have very clean, clear, exact data that you could just manipulate people. Do you really
They can use to control people,
Do you really think that Netflix putting out that movie with The Rock and Gal Gadot and and that movie's like
Ryan Reynolds
is the most streamed movie in Netflix history right now. Trust me, that was pure science. It was pure data science. It was not, we just want to make a cool movie. No. It was pure data science. That's what that was.
Yeah, that's probably true.
We need to start to approach this new reality, especially now that we're starting to get into this whole metaverse, Web 3.0, NFT, all of this stuff. We have to start to approach it that way, that this is just data.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
and
you have to just be aware of, what that means to you and what you're willing to trade with it, what you're willing to do to it, how much of it you want to give out, because it controls your reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And this has always been the case. It's just that now we're connected so much now
more,
that
so it's amplified.
You can get so much. It's so easy to get high precision data of people very quickly, and and so yeah. But I think I don't know. I think that's probably a good place to stop. We ran a little long today.
Yeah, sure. We'll snip it. But as always, first off, everyone check out the new Matrix movie. I'm not paid for this endorsement, but it's Keanu Reeves. I don't know what you're doing for Christmas, but it kind of looks like a great idea. Let us know what you think about it. We'll probably talk about it sometime in a future episode, because I'm actually curious to see how much it compares to the old one.
Because there's some things, the Wachowskis. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Only one of them signed off on this project.
Oh, really?
It wasn't two of them. It's just one of them this time.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I don't know if I'm using the right pronoun. Whatever.
Wait,
anyway,
you didn't say. I think you used all the gender neutral stuff. I know that sounds weird for us to be concerned, but I really respect the Wachowskis.
Yeah, exactly. So I respect them.
I'm doing it because I respect them.
Yeah. But yeah, guys, check it out. Let us know what you think. As always, we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Bottom Total Podcast. We are on Reddit. We have a subreddit. It's called the Bottom Total. We interact with people quite a bit on there, so let us know what you think. And as always, share the podcast, like it, tell your friends about it. We need your support. And like we say at the end of every episode, even though we fuck it up, stay turtling.
Stay turtling, my friends. There we go. Peace.